Leo. um this is from Desmond and Dempsey. Wishing you all a good night. I want to thank you all for selling out my shows in Stamford, Connecticut. Charles, yeah, I know. And it's exhausting. Want to remind y'all that I will be in Baltimore May 10th, 11th, and 12th, and I would love to sell out those shows. So hopefully I will see you out there in Baltimore. And this is the yeah, like, can we talk about the interview? There's really not anything else to say about the interview. And ultimately, I just need to protect myself because none of this shit is a safe space. I am trying to do some Los Angeles shows, but I got to figure out how to put it together. But there's just been so much kindness. Grenada's Carnival is the first week of August, to my knowledge. I come to Toronto on June 19th, on Juneteenth in America. I'm working on the DC show, so working to get that together. I do interview others on my podcast. You can listen to small doses. So I don't even know who Gilbert is. But I'm working on shows in New York and Atlanta and DC and the Bay right now. Working on putting that together. You know, as an exercise, it's funny because people often say that I'm the victim all the time. And I think it's fascinating because I really always just tell the same story. And so I was trying to think, I was like, okay, well, let's think of some scenarios where you were in the wrong and you had to course correct. And I can tell you, like, my path in leadership has definitely been a difficult one because the way that I was led was always through like trial by fire. And it took me just a long time. Why is Gilbert Arenas even talking about me? Like, why is Gilbert Arenas even talking about me? I'm too smart to find a good man. That's not even a thing. That's an unfortunate statement to make. That's an unfortunate statement to make. And it also is just like, I don't even know what that's attempting to say about men. Like, I don't even know what that's trying to say about men. But, you know, and the truth is, I'm not trying to find a good man. A good man will find me. I'm talking to somebody right now. Y'all so fucking weird. Anyways, the audio be messing up. So, but what I was going to say was that, you know, leadership has been a real journey for me because I feel like for a long time I was unknowingly mimicking, you know, the toxic ways that people were leading me. And, you know, so I've had to unlearn that. And part of that is also learning how to hire. You know, the whole thing about, you know, the autism stuff is that I realize how much I have been masking, and I realize how many ways I've had to like contort my life to keep me to stop putting me in situations where I am uncomfortable, where I have meltdowns, where I respond and react. And so, like, it takes time to learn these things and then like make adjustments. It's fascinating when you start really like learning about yourself. And, I think that a lot of the people who are, I think that when a lot of people say certain things about the interview, they don't understand. They're responding. They're coming from a place of not really acknowledging the fact that in certain spaces, certain dynamics shouldn't take place, and that's a real thing. Okay, someone said, when do you realize that you were on a leadership journey? I've always been on a leadership journey. My first grade teacher said she knew I was a leader. Like literally my first grade teacher, shout out to Miss Channel, she said that I was always on a leadership journey. And she says she recognized that early, and so she was protecting me. And I was amazed to find that out when I was older, because you just never know who's protecting you and who's taking care of you. And I really appreciate that there were people like protecting me that I didn't even know were protecting me. But, in my interview, I said, like, if there's anyone that I unknowingly or unintentionally harmed, like, I apologize. And I meant that because I have had to go through such a transformation. Also in that transformation, I learned how I was harming myself. And that is something that I think was like not aware, like it didn't occur to me that I was harming myself. Like that, it didn't occur to me that I had toxicities attached to like codependency and abandonment issues and stuff like that. And I see people saying things in here like, without a diagnosis, it's disrespectful to claim autism, and that's just simply untrue. Self-diagnosis is actually incredibly respected within the autism community, especially for adults and especially for Black women. They cut this out of the interview, but I explained in the interview that the reason this is because autism pathology is so specifically focused on young white males that it often leaves out Black people, particularly Black women. And unfortunately, it is also incredibly expensive, particularly for adults. Like in California, it can cost up to $10,000 for an autism diagnosis. Thank you, Yola Fahad. And it is also oftentimes like just very kind of traumatic on the process to the autism diagnosis, because for so many of us Black women, we are not seen, we are not listened to, we are stigmatized. And so in that stigmatization, you then end up becoming re-traumatized. And so I was very careful about vocalizing my autism, like even vocalizing out loud that, because I did so much research that did say that, because of these reasons, self-diagnosis is so valid. And it's also difficult to access it's also it's difficult to access diagnosis because a lot of the actual clinicians who perform it are not even culturally competent to be able to diagnose. And so in the neurodivergent community, like, there is such a respect for this because you know yourself. And one of the things that was so incredibly affirming in this process is how many people in the neurodivergent community gave me that information. Now, when I see people say things like it's not valid in the medical community, the reality is that it is valid in the autism and the neurodivergence community. What I think is interesting, though, is the way that some of us prop up institutions that are notably and notoriously racist whenever we feel like we need to get some type of confirmation for something. But it's oftentimes that the confirmation is coming from a space that we don't want or that we don't regard as safe for us in the first place. Like, I know people are like, oh, Amanda, I know that when I spoke on that show, I was deflecting around a question because it wasn't a safe space. I just didn't do a good enough job of the deflection because I'm autistic. We're not good at that shit. But we can name racism in every medical field, literally, particularly as it comes to Black women, literally every field. And it's so disconcerting. But, there's just a beautiful space in the autism community that I have found myself in, and I'm really respect. I just really I'm so warmed by that, and I am so supported, and I really thank y'all for that, because there's just so often where and this is something that I think we all have to learn, is that these doctors in general, like, they are learning. And they are trying to make the best of, like, what they know within the context of their own world. And so that's why so often you have to be your first step, And, when people say things like, well, no one can say they're diabetic without a diagnosis, etc., that is actually a really myopic and false it's a conflation. It's a false equivalency. Diabetes is a biological issue. It's not a psychological disorder. It's something that you can test for with actual blood tests. There is no blood test for autism. And so that's a false equivalency. Ultimately, when you are getting an autism diagnosis, they're giving you the same tests that are available by, that my psychiatrist provided to me. They're giving you the same tests. They're giving you the same tests. It's just that you then have to pay into, the diagnosis, because that allows you to get money from the government. So they're not going to just give you that. So, oftentimes we are forced to really expand our consciousness around these different spaces and how they interconnect, and the intersectionality, they should, that interconnect. Just blocking folks. And so, I think it's really, important that we identify these things, because we're also in such a time of awakening. We're also in such a time of, Kimmy, you're the moderator, just letting you know. We're also in such a time of, what's the word I'm looking for? Of learning. And, what I'm doing is I'm learning about myself. Like, I was watching that interview and I was like, oh, I can see why people don't like me. I was like, I can see why people don't like me, because I'm the kind of person where you're going to receive me based on your based on your perception and based on your realities. So like the way that I talk, you could take one way as like, oh, she's like strict and stern, like a strict parent. But that same person could have had like a really good, experience with like a teacher that spoke that way. And they would say, oh, she speaks like a stern teacher that like wants you to win. Right? So like the same person could look at the way I talk and be like, damn, she speaks like a drill sergeant. Like she's trying to get you. But then the same person could have had like a really positive experience with like a very like direct and like regimental, coach. And they would say like, oh, she speaks like a coach. So, it's like, it really is perception, and it's, and I trigger something in people. And I had a teacher, I had a professor tell me that I was a witch when I was in college. And I got really offended because he wasn't a professor I liked. So I was like, what's that supposed to mean? And he said, you are a witch because your presence brings the best out of those who don't know they have it. And it brings the worst out of those who are hiding it. And, it's taken me a really long time to really understand that. It's taken me a really long time to navigate that. I see people right now, like my name is trending. So you see a lot of stories that people are saying about me, some because they feel like there's a space right now to talk about it. And then some because they feel like there's an opportunity to make money off of it. Either way, tell your story. Like it's, at this point, I'm just like, whatever. My story is that I've been in process. My story is that I've been in process. My story is that I've also been like, I've had to access so many different people and spaces to advance this craft and this purpose. And in that, I've made mistakes. In that, I've made errors of judgment. In that, I've created environments that I think were more intense than people were. I feel like maybe that I created environments that were so intense that it was difficult for people to thrive in. And I've had to learn. I've had to learn. And, with all this stuff going on right now, it makes me want to go in a hole. It makes me want to go in a hole and hide. And people are like, you need to get off, you need to get off. And I had to say to myself, no, you need to be present. Because today I spoke in North Carolina and I delivered what I believe to be probably my best speech. I really believe it was the best speech I've ever delivered. And, and when people say that I play victim, I think it's fascinating because it is the exact opposite of a victim to be outside, to be outside. And I think the fascinating part of it too is that like the stories that people have about me are rarely stories where I did something like specifically to them. And so it's difficult to identify where the corrective behavior is other than to say, it was unintentional and I apologize. Hey, Gabe. So, I think one of the things that I thought was funny was people contacting me to say that they felt I was blindsiding Shannon, which I thought was an interesting take. But yeah, I just think, people want so bad for me to like tell stories of like when I fucked up. And I don't know what that's really about. In the stories I've told, I genuinely don't know where I did something wrong. And it's like, please tell me. And so I think that it's like folks will say things that are just not accurate, and that's that. I can but I can definitely say that I was really dreading that interview coming out because I knew how honest I was. And so I really greatly appreciate the individuals who have shared with me that they grew from the interview, that they felt seen, and that they, that they really like learned something about me that they didn't know before, like that they felt like they understood me better, and that was cool. What? Ugh, some of y'all are just ignorant, and I'm not going to pretend that you're not anymore. Some of y'all are ignorant, and if you say ignorant shit to me, I'm going to say that you're ignorant and I'm going to block you. So watch what you say to me. I'm not going to pretend anymore. And if you thought I was I was real before, like I'm not doing this with y'all no more. Cuz there's too many dope, beautiful, like insightful people to just like take up the space of them. When I said I have rage, he said, "Are you single?" And I said, "Yeah, you want to talk about it?" And he said, "We'll talk about it later." But I wouldn't want to be a professor, because if I'm a professor, I'm still back in the institution. I can't be in an institution. I don't want to work for people. I don't do well working for people. I don't do well working for people because I really am an oddity. I'm weird, and I'm art, I'm just like, and so it's taken me a long time to find a work group of people to work with that understand that. I'm also incredibly fastidious, and I'm demanding that things are what they should be. And if you are not someone that is like that yourself, then I can be very intense. So, I know that about myself. And so I've had to learn how to hire with that consideration. I also know that this is how I talk. This is how I talk. This is how I talk. It's not going to change. I'm not going to start talking like this. I spent 3 years doing that with a man. Talking like this, to be soft. At a certain point, I started talking like a kid. Like, it's just, I can't do it anymore. It was masking for 3 years, just trying to be soft, and it didn't matter. It's so funny when I see people saying, oh, you shouldn't have lied about your autism diagnosis. I did not lie. But the funny part about it is that people were saying I was lying when they thought that I had said there was a clinical, which of course they misheard. But so they were saying that regardless, irregardless. But yeah, I spent 3 years trying to exhibit softness. Even though, yes, that I talk like this, Yes, it was meant to be misleading. It's not meant to be misleading. That's not what I mean to say, but it was meant to be circuitous because I was being pressured about something that I shouldn't have been pressured about. And I did not deserve to be, questioned in that fashion. If someone says they have ADHD, you don't say, well, how do you know? Like, it's a completely inappropriate and disrespectful question, like in a very real way. The only reason he was asking that question was to undermine it. So there was no reason for me to honor it with an answer. And so I didn't honor it with an answer. I said what I said. I just didn't do a good enough job of saying what I said. I also think it's interesting the judgment that so many of you all place on a situation that you've never been in. So when you are in a scenario and you have been interviewed for an hour and you are revealing something that is very personal to you in a space that you thought was safe that has become very contentious very quickly, then you can ask me about why I did what I did. Because you will be speaking from a place, because you're not asking me for my answer. You're asking me because you have decided what the right thing to do was. But so often we don't really do ourselves or the other person the justice of considering that, hey, there's a myriad of reasons why things happen, and we can deduce that there's a myriad of reasons why things happen. And unfortunately, for most of us, the deduction is a negative one. That's usually what we land on. The deduction lands on being a negative one far too often. It's unfortunate that we do that, because really it's like we can identify that also maybe we don't know. And the other part of it is that we don't need to know. Like, I don't think y'all really understand how long 3 hours is to be talking. I think it's really important to really just excise ourselves from scenarios that we've never been in and just understand that we can't speak to that. We just can't. We just can't. I mean, I think that's just something that we should really try and do. Like, I don't find myself watching basketball players and going, I mean, why would they do that? And like really meaning it, because I'm not in a game. And let me just tell you, because this is a dumb question. Sometimes someone said, so you wanted a space where there was no pushback? Yes, that's typically what an interview is. A conversation, yes. When people come on my podcast, Small Doses, there is no pushback. I don't invite people on my show to push back. Like, we're so accustomed to conflict that we can't even conceptualize warm spaces. If you listen to Small Doses podcast, you do not hear pushback. People tell me their stories. People tell me their experiences. The only time you've heard pushback is when I'm speaking to Jason Lee and he's telling me his blog is not a gossip blog. Like, I'm like, yes, it is. It is a gossip blog. Or when I'm talking to Immortal Technique and he just won't answer a question. But if you tell me that, this is, okay, so, we had this one, Eridani. You should expect pushback when you're in the media. Are you in the media, Eridani? I don't think you are. I don't think you are. But I know that the spaces that I create are not about pushback. I am not an Israeli, army general lying about genocide. That is pushback. When you are going on a news show to discuss politics as a representative of a political space, that is pushback. That is when there's going to be pushback. When you are invited into a space as a guest, there should be a warmth and a receptiveness that is not about pushback. And no, you don't need pushback to create conversation. Being a conversationalist is not about pushback. And I want to say this because I want to introduce some other options for all of us, right? The thing about it is that when people are sharing their stories, no, you shouldn't be challenging their stories. No. It's odd to me that you guys are interacting with your peoples in your life like this. Because challenging someone's stories is really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's really adversarial. It's really adversarial, and it doesn't bring in. It doesn't bring in, it repels. And I think there's a way to, to create safer spaces that we need to really talk about. Because I'm listening and I'm seeing that there is this understanding that we should expect there to be like some adversarialness, and there just doesn't have to be. It doesn't. You really don't. You actively, yes, Courtney, you actively listen. You ask questions because of curiosity, not because of contrarianism. You don't interact to argue. You interact to engage. And I think that's why I feel like when I do my interviews, so often people will say, wow, like I've never said this before. I've never said this before in this space. And that makes me feel so good because it lets me know that I welcomed them in. And so much of these platforms are really built on conflict. Ooh, I've never heard that before. Play Big Queen. People love to predatory listen. I've never heard that before. I love that. The predatory listen. It's so true. They love to predatory listen. But I just want to introduce the possibility of reconsidering how you're interacting with folks, because oftentimes we're mimicking how people interacted with us. So for instance, like my father would always question, like he would interact with me in a way that was like dubious. Like he was always distrusting, always. And so it always felt like I had to validate and prove. And that is not a safe space for a child or for anybody, right? But it's very triggering when people put me in that space and I feel like I'm being interrogated. And it like makes me like feel like my back is against the wall. But that is something that I think a lot of us are accustomed to. And especially as Black children, we are absolutely accustomed to that because so often we were in spaces where we were not trusted and we were, what's the word I'm looking for? We were adultified. And so we weren't given the grace of youth and error. We were treated like we weren't making mistakes, but like we were making choices. And the thing about it is that so often in our adolescence, we are just making mistakes that look like choices. But ultimately, those choices are coming from an unformed brain. They're coming from an unformed brain. So we have a habit. We have a habit of interacting with each other in this way. Like we think somebody's lying to us. We think somebody is questioning us. We think somebody is being disingenuous because we have been treated like that when we were children. You know, we were treated like that when we were children. And so in order for us to, sophisticated Libra, unfortunately, that's what you think, but that's just simply incorrect. You're just misreading the situation. But I think it's really important though, to take a moment to identify, like, is that how you interact? Because I know that we, a lot of times do that with our partners. A good interviewer does not question their interviewee with doubt. No. A good interviewer welcomes their interviewee in with curiosity. And curiosity does not undermine validity. So for instance, like some of the ways that I think the questions could have been verbalized that could have, I'll just use the interview, for example. Some ways that questions could have been re-verbalized that would have not been undermining, but that would have been curiosity is like, oh, So when I say like, and I felt like my teacher was racist, why did you feel that she was racist? And then I share my reasons. And then if that person says, oh, well, that doesn't feel like racism to me, that's the end of that. There's no convincing. So the problem comes in trying to convince someone else that your version of their experience is the correct version. That's where the problem comes in. You might take their story and say, oh, that sounds different to me. And then you express how it sounds different to you. And then that's that. That's that. But again, I just know that I went into my last relationship with a lot of bad habits that I learned to undo because I was in therapy and actively, I had workbooks. Like I just really wanted to remove my toxicities from the space. And I think that it was... I'm just going to block people who aren't bringing anything valid to this conversation. So I just want to let that be known. I'm going to block anybody who is not bringing anything of like validity to the conversation. So just know that. So think before you type. Think before you type. So what I was going to say, what was I going to say? What was I saying? I have to block the negativity because I have to stay lifted. I have to stay lifted because I really do have work to do and I have purpose. And so many of y'all have told me that and spoken into me. And it kept me from listening to the shadows that try to speak to me. It really did. It kept me from listening to the shadows that try to speak to me. All of us have shadows that are within us, and some speak louder to others than they do to others. And you all's support was louder than the shadows, and I really appreciate that in a very, very real way because it's something I'm battling all the time. So the undoing of toxic patterns, like I realized in my last relationship that, we would speak to each other in this adversarial way that had like a paranoia about it, right? It had a paranoia about it. And that paranoia is not coming from this relationship. That paranoia is coming from somewhere else. And it's not that it's invalid. It's definitely not invalid. But it means that you have to communicate differently, right? It means that you have to communicate differently because you are now repelling versus bringing in. And, oh my God, it's hard work. It's hard work. I had a sister that I really, really respect today say, I just want to tell you good job for your ability to express vulnerability. And I said, I just need you to know, like, I really thank you for telling me that because that's the work that other people may not see that you're doing that is like very hard. Right? Somebody else said to me today, they said, what was the other thing that someone said today that really moved me? They said, they said, I just want to give you kudos for the way that your growth has been with emotional regulation. And I just really appreciated that because that's something I've really had to work really, 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 really hard on. I've had to work really, really hard on. So someone asked me to talk about the North Carolina speech. So I did a speech today in North Carolina at the National Black Alliance. And I was really proud of the speech because I didn't know what I was going to say going in. And I often don't. It just makes for, I feel like it's just a better, like the way that I perform and speak, it makes for just a better performance. But when I came out to the podium, I just could feel the room. And I was told that these were going to be politicians in this room and there was going to be corporate people in this room. And so I knew that I had to address this room, at the root. I knew that I had to address them at the root. And so I spoke to them and I started by saying, let's take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath and let's get rid of our outside stuff. Let's get rid of our worries. And let's get rid of our ego. Because I knew that the things that I needed to discuss were things that people were going to feel some type of way about. Because when you start talking about capitalism and the way that blackness has bought into it, when you start talking, see, I know that because look at the numbers dropping. When you start talking about the fact that, excellence, black excellence will not save us, people feel some type of way because they feel like you're undermining their elevation. And what we have to remember is that black excellence is a standard. Black excellence is a standard. We have always been excellent. When we talk about black excellence within the context of whiteness, that's not really to me espousing black excellence. It's just revealing white mediocrity. So there's really nothing there to me that we have to say as it relates to white supremacy. That's why I don't like black firsts. I don't like black firsts because black first really just says that this is valuable now because it broke through some ceiling of whiteness. But the ceiling of whiteness was always just constructed of falsehoods. It's not real. This feeling of whiteness is just, buttressed by mediocrity. So when we talk about black firsts and we try and make it wow, this person is so great because they're the first black, I know that they had to push to get that. And so we're applauding that they got it in spite of. But sometimes there's this idea that this person is more valuable because they are the black person in a white space. And I hate it. I hate it. We have always been excellent. So black excellence is the standard. And so for me, I feel like when we talk about black excellence as some indicator that we are undoing white supremacy, we are misleading ourselves. We're misleading ourselves to think that our ability to play in their space and to just simply adapt to their bullshit is a sign of our greatness. It really, in my opinion, is not necessarily a sign of our greatness as much of just a frustration. It's just a frustration. It's just, it is. And I think that it's imperative that we ask ourselves over and over again, what makes a space black? When we put black on a space, what does that infer? What is attached to that? What is attached to that? Is it simply just that black people are going to be there? What is attached to that? So I had a really captive audience today that was really responsive, and it really made me feel good because it was a lot of elder black women as well. And I came on this live because I cannot let myself get beat up by the noise. I can't let myself get beat up by the noise. I can't. And there's only so many times that you can, apologize. There's only so much accountability you can take that goes beyond accountability, and people want you to just crumble. But when I spoke to this group today, this group of women, they really poured into me. It wasn't just women, actually. This group of people, they really poured into me. And I really love, how much love I have for black folks. And I'm looking around and I feel so often like I'm trying to convince us to be better at that. Even the ones who hate me. I mean, there's so many incredibly intelligent black women who are just out here mad at me. mad at me. They're like, she this, she that. You know, I've seen people say I'm anti-black, which is like bonkers. You know, but it's so funny. Like these blogs and shit, they will be so quick to record you, to expose, you know, to expose. But they're never there to lift you. They ain't never gonna lift you. So yeah, if there's any questions before I get off of here, because I'm going to get off of here because it's late and I have breakfast with my bestie in the morning. What advice would I give a recent graduate? I don't know. I don't know. The world is so defunct right now. The world is so distorted. And it's such a difficult time to come into this world as an adult. I guess the advice I would really give is to make sure that you have strong alliances. Make sure you have strong alliances. The people that you came through these years with, these were pandemic years. Like, this is a tough time. And you know, and there's people leaving comments in here that you should look at too. But yes, community, Brianna White Official. Make sure you have strong alliances because it really does mean that, because when I say the world is like upside down, it just requires you to be braced. You know? It requires you to be braced. I have stand up in Philadelphia in August. Yeah. So you got to find your tribe. And I don't think I would have said that a year ago. I think my response would have been much more related to career and less related to like how to keep your sturdiness, you know, your solidity. But I think that's really what it's going to take when you get out of here. You know, that's it's community, because that's where we're going anyway. And it's imperative. Some of y'all are asking questions that are bonkers. Well, I think my answer would have changed just because like the last year has just been such an uprooting of just such an uprooting and such an awakening around how distorted and how dysfunctional that this place is, that it really lets you know that you can't lean, even if you had a modicum of thought that you could lean on these systems, that you could lean on these, or that you could find your way through these and navigate through these systems. And ultimately, you really need to just like hunker down's not the word, but like lock arms. You know, you need to lock arms with the people who are going to get you, are going to support you, are going to ride with you, are going to encourage you. And it's, to Sierra, it is difficult, but it's happening. Hey, Takara. Takara's always shown me love. I appreciate that. But I've had to grow through this experience for the last 2 months. I've had to grow into a new level of self-love. And I don't think a lot of people really can understand. It's called RSD, but there's literally like a whole disorder around rejection, and just the way it cripples some of us, and the way that, you feel like you always gotta and I don't know if, to my knowledge, it's something that can also develop just out of people who've been bullied. But the main point is that I just think that so often we ascribe for people what they should and should not be dealing with. And we do this oftentimes by their status, or by how much money they have, or by, who they have around them. And we really, really, really do not know we don't know people's struggles. We don't know people's journeys. And, for all intents and purposes, we don't need to know. You don't need to know. You just need to respect and regard. And, I'm somebody who just thinks that, there it is, rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria. I'm just somebody who struggles with that. Like, I just struggle with being rejected. And I'm sure that has something to do with my father. But people think that because you may be like, I can talk to a stadium. I can talk to a concert hall of 2,600 people without blinking an eye. When I was hosting the Roots picnic, there was like 3,000 plus people without batting an eye. But if I'm at a dinner and someone brings in people that I did not know were coming to this dinner, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to count the lights. I cannot adjust. I can't adjust. It takes so long for me to get comfortable again. I can't. I think it's very, and so I say that because, we make up things that are not based on real things. We make up things that are not real things. And then we ask questions to people that we don't ask ourselves. Most questions, if you ask yourself the question, you'll get the answer. Most questions. Most of the questions that y'all ask me, if you ask yourself, you will get the answer. Sometimes I see y'all say things like, Amanda, you don't have to do this. Amanda, you don't have to do that. I know. But I also know my position in this earth. And I know that sometimes I'm saying things not for me. I'm saying things for the people who don't have this platform to speak. I'm saying things for the folks that don't feel like they're seen. What are you talking about? How can you be for the people and not want to be challenged in public spaces? What does one have to do with the other? I am not an elected official. And why are y'all so pressed on challenging? Jesus fucking Christ. What is this obsession with challenging people who don't even affect your life? I've never understood this concept. Everyone is so, is it a power struggle? Is it like a, not struggle, but is it a power, like, is it a need for power to feel like that. I've never understood that. I've never understood that concept. You know, I don't understand it, because I feel like ultimately when you see people for the people, we work so hard to like try to get them to prove that they're really for the people. And a lot of times you end up shutting people down. You know, there's nothing, it's a thankless job to be for the people. Because the people is just this, you know, amorphous, it's just this amorphous voice full of people that don't necessarily have concern for you, but expect for you to have concern for the people. It's tough. It's tough. You know, that's why I've been asking people when I do events and stuff, like, what are you bringing to the space to make it safe? You know, what are you bringing to the space to make it safe? Because as a people, we haven't really evolved much, because the internet is really just the Roman Colosseum. It's just people cheering to you know, for the next person to fall. And then you step over them and go to the next one. It's like the people that this person is talking about are never satiated. And so that's why so much of what I try to do is encourage folks to really pour into themselves, so that you're filling yourself up. And you're filling yourself up, and you don't gotta pick and nitpick and pull from other people to feel full. Because that's what so many people are doing. You know, we're like pulling from other people to feel full. I am absolutely guilty of having done that in the past. I mean, I'm sure I still do that a little bit at this point, but I'm a lot more conscious of it. You know, but like that's where jealousy comes from, envy, right? That's where cattiness comes from. Like you're trying to fill yourself up by taking pieces from other people. It's just like, it's not sustainable. It's very parasitic and vampiric. So that's why I'm like, nah, like you got to pour into yourself, and you got to love yourself and do all of that, so that when you see somebody else, you don't got to do all that. I do lives on Patreon. Every Sunday, I do a live at 7:30 Pacific on Patreon. And it's the bonus episode of Small Doses Podcast. So, Dawn Lee. Thank you, April Butcher. But I'm maintaining. I know I've gotten a lot of love and support from people, because they see and they know what it's like to be attacked. And it's been 2 months. It's been really consistent. So it can wear you down. It can wear you out. But I'm really just trying my best. Every day. I'm really just trying my best. And, you know, I've been through some fuck shit, and I'm going to talk about it. And I've been through some dope shit, and I talk about it. And, I think it's unfair that people expect you to be wrong just because things have happened to you. And I wasn't wrong in the situations where things have happened to me. And I know that because I am a overthinker and an overanalyzer. And I have been wrong in other situations. And I don't like to be wrong. So I work really hard to make sure I'm doing the right thing. I do. I work really, really hard to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So I really look through everything with an abundance mindset. And I know that I'm only destined for good things. And that anything that comes to me with ease is for me. So even though this season has been difficult and continues to be frustrating, there are, like, people keep asking me, like, do you wish you hadn't done the interview? And that, absolutely no. The interview came to me. I was invited on and I showed up. And anything that happens in that type of flow is for you. Even though it may feel like it's against you, it's for you. And that is how, that's how I look at things. Like, it's that's how it goes. So that's how I've come to manage things. What's next for Amanda? Is Smart, Funny, and Black coming back? Smart, Funny, and Black will come back, but I just need to refocus. I'm going to do a one-woman show that I'm going to mount in November called What Would the Ancestors Do? And I want that to be like my next great opus. And I'm really working on it, and I'm really excited about it. Yeah. So, the corny shit may continue. Rex Roy. Yeah. I mean, I'm an empath. I can feel it even if I don't look at the comments. So, but I really believe. What's my favorite hip hop album? Mobb Deep, The Infamous. No, Grenada, Communism in Grenada. You're noticed. Okay. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Ooh, some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs. Redemption songs. All right, well, y'all ain't asking more questions, so I'm gonna head out. Again, you're appreciated. You keep me lifted. Get your tickets to I Vocal Stim all day long. Get your tickets to my tour, the Unlikable Tour, at amandaseals.com. And I would ask that our takeaway tonight be that we consider how we converse. You know, that we consider how we converse. Because at the beginning of this conversation, so many people were like, well, aren't you, like, what's wrong with being challenged? What's wrong with being questioned? And not understanding that that's actually like that's not like a way to speak to people that you're trying to bring in. It's just not. So if you're saying it to me, you probably are doing it in your own life. And if you shift that, you'll probably see a change in how the energy is coming to you from the people around you. So, yep, collaborative versus combative conversation. Mwah. Remember, we are each other's business when we look out.